One of the big stories in marketing and business this year has been the rise of plant-based meat, and of course the high-profile Beyond Meat IPO was just part of that. We're joined now by Richard Baker. He's founder of a company called The Food Distribution Guy, and it's great to have you here because you specialize in helping companies to get their products into the grocery industry.
I do. Thank you very much for the time, Andrew. Yes, exactly. That's what we try to do. We try to help emerging and established businesses get listed and stay listed in the Canadian grocery sector.
And that can be tough because, of course, well, the battle for shelf space, and you're also selling into an oligopolistic industry in some ways.
Well, and that is, yes, it is. And the fact is it's even getting tougher. And the fact is that, at the beginning of 2018, with the introduction of beer, introduction of wine into the grocery stores, has taken valuable shelf space away from food products.
That's an interesting angle, actually. Yeah, let's talk about the plant-based meat, though, because there's a plethora of products out there. I mean, it's not a new category, but it's mushrooming in profile anyway. A number of offerings.
Well, the plant-based food sector was just identified as the food trend of the year by Food Business News in the United States. And it has taken off to the point now where the fact is sales in this country just topped approximately $1.7 billion for the period ending December 2018. This represented an approximate increase of 20% over a 2-year period, compared to 1% to 2% for any other categories in the food sector.
So it's interesting. So it's growing rapidly.
It is growing rapidly, and the fact is that research indicates 43% of consumers in Canada intend to increase their consumption of plant-based foods in the upcoming year.
That's amazing. So consumers are on board with this?
Well, consumers are on board with this. I think it's augmented by another stat there, Andrew, is that first and foremost, 10% of the population in this country now identifies as a vegan or as a vegetarian. And an additional 10% now also identifies as a flexitarian.
What's for that? Remind us what a flexitarian is.
A flexitarian is someone that is actually looking to increase their consumption of plant-based foods, but at the same time does not mind having that sirloin steak every once in a while.
The odd steak, yeah.
Correct.
A New York steak on a Friday night.
That's correct. Absolutely, Andrew. That's correct. Yeah, they still love their meat, but their concentration is on the plant-based sector.
So I'm trying to think. I mean, some traditional meat products are branded, of course, Maple Leaf. But often in the sector, it's not a branded sector. I mean, you go in, you just buy unbranded meat in the grocery. Well,
private label is, due to the fluctuation of increase in retail prices, that private label is one of the areas which is experiencing, incremental growth as well as a result of its consumer trying to save money. And meat is a big item, isn't it, on the consumer food bill? It is definitely, because it's one of the biggest, it's the item which is increasing the most. And the fact is, research shows also in the past decade, there has been approximately a 12.5% reduction in the amount of meat that the average Canadian consumes every year now. So along come the plant-based products. Correct. And one point you want to make is it's not just going to stop at plant-based beef or ground beef, plant-based chicken, fish, even plant-based utensils. Well, the fact you're absolutely correct. For example, Beyond Meat, as you identified in the opening segment, is the leader. And they have actually talked about coming out with a plant-based bacon. There's meat, there's plant-based eggs, there's plant-based cheese. There's a firm that I've talked with that has come out with a plant-based line of ice cream. And you're absolutely correct. We're in a couple of discussions with firms that have come out with plant-based cups, straws, and plates. Will this market belong to the big food firms, ultimately, the big existing firms in protein, if I can use that awful expression, or will it be newcomers, do you think? Well, I think it's going to become the newcomers because the fact, again, research reveals the fact is that the growth in the food sector is coming from the smaller individual brands that are stealing market share away from the big established brands. Over the last, let's say, 5 years or so, the growth rate for the the top 25 brands in the food sector is relatively flat, whereas the smaller independent brands owned by entrepreneurs has gone up anywhere from 3 to 5% per year.
That's interesting. I guess the big players sometimes buy up these entrepreneurial brands to try to capture that.
Well, they are. Or the fact is that Maple Leaf Foods has come out with Meat Light. So that is their version for Beyond Meat's plant-based burger.
Light Life.
Light Life, sorry. Light Life, correct.
Yeah,
sorry, that may be probably correct. Yes, Light Life.
And they're coming, they're trying to come back,
And so they're introducing that in the Canadian marketplace, but we're a relatively small player, again, when it comes to the plant-based sector, because really that the meat is just starting to come into the marketplace as of around September of this year. What has really driven the growth in the plant-based sector in Canada has been alternative milks.
Oh, yes.
The soya milks, the almond milks, the oat milks are just, primary three. And where the fact is that over the past 3 years, their sales have gone up by close to 61% in Canada.
I bet the dairy crowd aren't too happy to see that.
Well, no, not at all, because the dairy industry actually has their consumption of milk has actually gone down close to 20% over the past decade.
And as you know, we just saw Dean Foods in America file for protection.
That's correct, actually, Dean. That's right, correct. They've actually just filed for bankruptcy, and. But yet, just this past September, I met a firm from the United States where the fact is up to maybe 5 to 7 years ago, they were in the milk sector. They actually saw the writing on the wall, and they've now gone into the alternative milk sector.
That's fascinating stuff. Richard, thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you very much for your time, Andrew.